This is the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm Matt Wyatt. Our guest today, Pierce Young, Private Lands Wildlife Biologist here at MDWFP, and the 2022 Wildlife Biologist of the Year. We're talking deer hunting.
This episode of the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast is brought to you by the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, Parks, and Marine.
Welcome to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm Matt Wyatt. Deer hunting, and we're talking to somebody that knows a lot about it. And very specifically, here in the state of Mississippi, folks that own private land and helping them manage their population on their own property. His name's Pierce Young, with us here today on the show.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, good to see you too. So I thought about starting with the big story, the 2022 Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Biologist of the Year.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Not that you hadn't heard congratulations enough over the last couple of years, I'm sure, but as now it's 2022, but still very recent. And for you, what kind of honor was that?
Oh man, it was a huge honor. You know, this is a job I love to do, and it was given to me, you know, by a lot of other biologists that I respect and love to work with. So a lot of friends, and so it was a huge honor.
Yeah. So Private Lands Wildlife Biologist, that's the official title.
That's right.
For someone listening that doesn't really know what that entails, how would you describe it?
Sure. So a lot of people would probably describe the job position more of a wildlife management consultant. So what we do is we work with private landowners on any type of wildlife management to meet the goals on their properties, whether that's deer management, turkey management, butterflies. I mean, it really can be just about anything. And the main reason we do that is, you know, we work for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, the state wildlife agency. And so the core mission of the agency, part of that is to manage the state's wildlife. Well, over 80% of wildlife are on private land. So as a state agency, we can't really manage the state's wildlife without connecting with private landowners and helping them with management on their places.
It's really cool. And we're going to come back to that. I want to talk about you too. How'd you get to this? Like, tell me kind of your path in your life that led you here.
Yeah. So my path is probably not very different from a lot of other wildlife biologists. You know, I grew up hunting. You know, my earliest memories were, you know, sitting in the deer stand with my granddad or my dad, you know, and going hunting and being outside. And so it was just a lifelong passion that, you know, when I got into high school, and I really loved science, you know, and biology, you know, in high school. And I think we may have taken a test on, you know, what type of career you might fit best in. And on the list was wildlife biologist. And I said, what's that? That sounds awesome, you know, and I was hooked ever since. And then also the hunting club I grew up hunting in, later, we had a wildlife biologist, our deer coordinator, William McKinley, who's still working here, was our wildlife biologist, and we got to meet him and ride around with him. And I said, that's what I want to do, you know, the rest of my life. You know, definitely wanted a job that I enjoyed, and so started down that path to get here. Yeah.
And so you kind of have that aha moment and realize, okay, this is what I want to do. What was the first step you had to take, like right after high school, upon graduation? What'd you have to do?
Yeah, so the first thing I had to do was to get a bachelor's degree. I went to Mississippi State University to get my bachelor's degree in wildlife biology, wildlife science. Went there, got a lot of work experience at the MSU Deer Lab, working there, doing some deer research. And then talking with the state agency biologist at the time, like William, who became a mentor to me, he said, if you want to do what I do, you need a master's degree. And I had been volunteering with them and working with the MSU Deer Lab. And by the time I got I finished up and got my bachelor's degree, they said, you really need to go somewhere else to get your master's degree, to learn something new, something more than we can teach you. So I ended up getting on a project down in South Texas. So I'm from Mississippi. I'm from Columbus, Mississippi, a Mississippi boy all my life. And so I went down to South Texas to do deer research, right near the border there in South Texas. And that was a shock, to the system, but a very cool experience. So went down there, got my master's degree, and was lucky enough that as soon as I finished up there, they had a job opening here, and was able to come on and start working for the agency right out of college.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, South Texas, when you say it was a shock, how so? Like distance from home, geography, like everything?
Yeah, I guess distance from home was part of it. That really didn't bother me a whole lot, but it's a whole different, put it in wildlife biology terms, habitat type. Went from big trees and normal range to basically a scrubland desert. Everything has thorns down there. It's very dry. Not a lot of trees, or what they call trees, are 20 foot high compared to 100 foot high. And so, definitely coming back for holidays, driving from South Texas back to Mississippi, the first tree I saw, I was happy to see it, because, it's been a while since you've seen one, being in the desert, doing deer research. So definitely a shock to the system in that way.
When I was a kid, I remember meeting a man from Wyoming. It was actually a church thing. We went out there and helped them, and then they came to visit us. And at that time, it was North Alabama. And I remember when he came from Wyoming to what it was again, North Alabama, to visit, he said he felt like he was suffocating because he couldn't see far enough. There's trees everywhere, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, as far as that experience again, before you return to Mississippi, that experience in another state. And this may be a little more technical, but what was the difference in terms of like deer population, individually, like food sources, and how that affected everything? Was it kind of similar to here, or did those make a big difference?
It was interesting to see a lot of the similarities of what deer need, to thrive and survive. But also the differences because they're living in an environment down there with vegetation that has also evolved to survive down there, where they may be in a 7-year drought. They might get 4 inches of rain, year round, where we might get that on a Tuesday, and so those deer have adapted, and anyone who knows about South Texas deer hunting knows that they can grow some really big deer down there as well. So the deer, they can definitely have some high populations. It's to compare it to something similar to Mississippi. It's like they're living in a clear-cut thicket, but it's the whole of South Texas,
Yeah.
Which anyone who really knows much about what deer thrive in, they love a thicket, right? That's their food sources, that's their cover. They can really thrive in that environment, and they do in South Texas. But some differences are, typically here, a good fawn recruitment rate would be like 60% a year, where down there they might have some years that are 80% and some years that are 0. Just depends on if they get rain or not. It's so much driven by rain down there. It's a lot different. Yeah.
And what an interesting sort of contrast for you to have experienced that after a period of time at the Deer Lab. Obviously growing up in Mississippi and living here, but spending time at that MSU Deer Lab too. What was that experience like at State?
Oh yeah, it was a great experience. Got to meet a lot of people that I work with now. A lot of different projects were going on at the time that were really cool. I was able to help run one research project as an undergraduate in Lowndes County. We were tagging wild fawns and yearling bucks, watching them grow. And then there was a separate study going on in the deer pens, looking at the difference between nutrition and genetics. Where they took deer from different parts of Mississippi, the Delta and the coast, and over generations they were be able to show that it was not genetics, it was nutrition. That's the big driver, but it takes generations. So a lot of cool stuff was going on, at the time. And also just the cool experience of, being young and in college, handling deer, live deer like that. So just really fun time, definitely for me in my life.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed seeing the pictures that emanate from the MSU Deer Lab too. The things that you see there is pretty cool. All in, a pretty small area. And then for you to then, like you said, okay, so 80% of, the area and the population in our state is private lands. Mm-hmm. And then to go into that where you're in a position to consult with people, they're asking you questions about what to do on their property. What was that step like from education and research into now you're one-on-one working with landowners? Yeah,
so for me, I had a little bit of experience working with landowners just through the research I had been doing, especially at MSU, the Lowndes County study. I was working with about 24 different landowners on that project. So I had a little bit of experience there, and just with the degree and the people I was working with at the agency, and I was the two deer biologists at MSU Deer Lab, Dr. Steve Damaris and Dr. Bronson Strickland, wealth of knowledge on deer. So it was easy for me to gain a lot of knowledge really quickly from people like that. Same thing in South Texas, just a lot of knowledge, working with landowners too down there and other people. So coming back, that is something I definitely wanted. That was the biggest thing for me to want to do coming back, was working with landowners, trying to help them reach their goals. That's very rewarding for me. I see that now, and it was something that excited me then, to help people with that starting out. So, it's a learning curve. I would definitely say my knowledge base on wildlife management is a lot better now, of course, than when I started. Just through the experience of working with, I'd have to go back and look, but I know I've personally worked with hundreds of properties at this point, and seeing those changes, with the things they've implemented and the experience with all of that, and then also working with a lot of other biologists that are working with different situations and gaining that experience and knowledge from them. So it's definitely been a rewarding experience for sure.
Hundreds of properties, that's statewide?
Statewide, yeah. Now my region has been mostly central Mississippi. Right now we have probably, I would say 8 biologists in the private land staff. There are a few coordinator positions that are like pseudo private lands, but they may exclusively work with waterfowl or ducks. But around 8 private lands biologists that work with private landowners. And so we kind of have, based on where we live, we work with a certain geography. I live in central Mississippi, Brandon, Mississippi, when I came back. And a lot of my background, of course, as we talked about, is deer management. So a lot of the bigger deer management properties are in central Mississippi, so that's where they wanted to put me, and that's where I started. So I've really focused more in central Mississippi. When I say central Mississippi, Mendenhall up to Winona, South Delta area, the Big Black corridor, Pearl River corridor, that area. But I've worked with other biologists all over the state doing various things too.
So from a department standpoint, I think one thing that is interesting is site visits. So you go and visit with someone, it doesn't cost them anything.
No, free service, that, and a lot of the biologists we have and the knowledge the number of properties that we've been able to work with, in the state, for that to be a free service, you're getting a lot for your, for your money, really. I mean, to be able to not pay someone to get all that technical guidance that we provide, is definitely a big service. A lot of other states do charge for that.
Yeah. What's either maybe the question or the issue that you get the most? Like, they reach out to you, a landowner, and they're going to ask, for your help.
Right.
What are you dealing with mostly?
Yeah. So I mainly work with private landowners where their number one goal is deer management. And so
numbers, food source, habitat, everything.
I would say most people are interested, or a lot of the questions I get are pertaining to food plots.
Okay.
Which we try to. Food plots are great and they have their place. We definitely try to focus on a bigger picture, especially if they can manage habitat. Trying to focus on the things that are limiting to them. They may have certain questions that they want to ask, but we try to meet with them and evaluate, we ask them what their goal is, and we get them to rank not just one goal, but multiple goals. Try to make sure what they're doing fits all those goals. And then try to figure out what may be holding them back and focusing on that. And even though we get a lot of questions about food plots, really they may need to do a timber thinning and do some prescribed burning, and that's going to see a lot bigger gains than, say, changing your food plot from one type of clover to the other or something like that.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense. And as you talk, I look at you and I can't help but also, back up to 10,000 feet. And I say, okay, here's a kid from Columbus, Mississippi, who is, obsessed with hunting and grew up doing it with dad and granddad, goes to school close by, and now look at what he's doing for a living.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a dream job?
It really is. It's I got into this field because I wanted a job that I love to go to. And for me, growing up deer hunting and consuming a lot of knowledge, now I have access to some of the best knowledge, some of the best biologists. We go to lunch with some of the best biologists. We go to these conferences with some of the best biologists in the world, and I get access to that knowledge now, and that's enjoyable for me, to build that up, and take that on. So yeah, I love it. I love helping, people work with that. Still love trying to get out and go hunting some, when I can. And now I have a 4-year-old daughter who's interested in doing that too. So taking her out and getting her interested in that and seeing her enjoy that. So, it's definitely a field that I love, and I'm sure, if you're listening to this podcast, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure. So no doubt about it. Back to dealing with, landowners when they come to you, and what's the process like as far as you kind of describe
Sure.
the issues and things that y'all talk about, whether it's, what they need per goal or per several goals.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as implementing it for them, is there a connection there too, or is it kind of getting them ready and handing the information off?
Yeah, so the process is, they reach out to us. They can go on our website, mdwfp.com/private lands. We have a easy button to click on. They can fill out an application. So we get some information going into it beforehand from them. We reach out to them, and then we set up what we call a site visit, where we want to meet with them on the property. And every biologist probably does it a little bit different. The way I do it, I like to meet with them at their property, spend an hour, maybe a couple hours, depending on where the conversation goes, really talking about what they want. And then as topics come up, insert information that might be helpful to them, and then go from there and just kind of see where it goes. We survey our landowners every so many years. We try to make our recommendations be as efficient as possible, mainly because these surveys have shown, the number one limiting factor for why people may not do some of the things we recommend is time. So the more efficient we can be with our recommendations, the better. And then after we talk through a lot of these things and what their limiting factors are, we go out, we look at the property and just continue it from there, and get more specific and point out certain things. I love doing site visits late winter and late summer with people that are interested in deer management, because I can look at the vegetation and see what the deer are eating or not eating and kind of gauge where the population might be. And it's easy to point out, when I have the landowner there and I'll say, hey, look at this cedar tree, they don't like eating this, and yet they're hammering it. They're consuming a lot of it. That's an issue. We need to shoot more does, and they need better food or whatever it may be. And so that usually takes about half a day, from the conversation to the ride around. And then from then on, it's however much time they want from me. I can come back out and in subsequent years or within that year, we do wildlife management plans. Put it down on paper, really what they want as far as recommendations go, and then also steer them towards other agencies, maybe like the forester or cost share programs through like USDA, and steer them in a way that they can build their team, so to speak. So also have other tools to help them meet their goals.
Yeah.
So I like to think of it as long-term relationship if they want it to be, but if they just want some quick, this is what I think type information, we can provide that too.
And a cost-free service for the landowner.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most amazing thing really about all of it, which speaks to what MDWFP is kind of here for.
That's right.
It's really incredible. Do you have a success story maybe that sort of stands out with a landowner or property somewhere over the years?
Man, honestly, I have a lot. Trying to pick out just one.
Yeah.
There's just so many of them. There's one guy I've been working with, for a long time. He had the property probably, 4 years before he met me.
Okay.
And
how did he meet you? Were you recommended to him?
I really don't remember.
Okay. But he reached out to you.
He reached out to us, and I met with him, and they had not shot a buck on the property for 4 years since they had the place, shooting a lot of does, and I started working with them, and they had really too many deer on the place, and they needed to shoot more. But we got him enrolled in the Deer Management Assistance Program, which is just it's a program we've had, since the 80s. We were the first state to have it, where a lot of people are probably familiar with pulling the jawbone and doing the body weights and sending all that information, to us. So we got them enrolled in that, started doing some camera surveys, some formal camera surveys, not just, putting some cameras in the woods, but actually, getting some numbers, buck to doe ratios, everything. And things were really, he's doing a lot of good stuff at the time. But they were focused. His focus was too much on things that weren't helping him a whole lot, and not enough on the things that really were. And so, and also just shooting more deer is really what he needed. A lot of his neighbors weren't. And so a lot of the bucks that they were producing, in the area were not staying just because the space issue, and so I remember after about 5 years working with him on that, they had shot a lot of bucks at that point, but none of them were what they considered trophies. And then when he finally sent me a picture of this really nice 170-inch buck, and not saying that's, everyone will get that if, working with us, but it is a really good area. And so, but he called me up and told me the story, and just to hear him being so happy, that all that work finally paid off, everything he did, and he really did. If I told him, you should try this or do that, he did it, no questions. And to put that, faith in, someone else when, you're putting a lot of this time and money into a property, it really takes a lot to do that, honestly. And to hear how happy he was, after all that, it was just, that lit me up. And I've got hundreds of stories like that. It's very rewarding.
That's really cool. Tell me about your first deer. You remember that far back?
Yeah. I remember it pretty vividly. I had been, going hunting, deer hunting, but the first time I actually shot a deer, I was with my grandfather. I think I was 7 years old, much older than like my daughter going. But I think I was 7 years old. We were in our hunting camp had, do-it-yourself box stands, that were the club members built. And there were shooting lanes, and I think I was in the bottom of the box stand eating peanuts. I was, for anyone who takes children hunting, you got to have your snacks. Right. My grandfather knew that too, and we had peanuts, and I think I was eating peanuts, and I fell asleep, took a nap in the chair, and my grandfather shook me. He's like, there's a deer, and I mean, it was really close. Thinking back, it was probably less than 50 yards, and I had a 280 rifle with some modified cartridges for recoil, and it was a pretty wide 6-point buck, and shot it. It dropped right there, and I just remember being so excited about it, and took it home and put the blood on the face, like a lot of people still do at the traditional first deer, and yeah, that was my first deer I ever shot, and there were many more after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hooked ever since.
Oh, hooked ever since.
7 years old, 6-point, first one.
Yeah.
With granddad.
Oh yeah.
It didn't get much better than that.
It really does. Yeah. It really does.
What was your heart beating pretty fast?
I don't remember.
Don't remember that?
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I mean, my heart beats fast now. I mean, even sometimes just shooting a doe, and I shoot plenty of those. But
that elevated heart rate, that's part of what brings you back each time, isn't it? It's just something about adrenaline.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I shot a doe this season with my daughter, and she was standing up next to me, and she was looking over my shoulder, and I think my heart was beating a lot faster than hers. She just, are you gonna shoot it? Are you gonna shoot it? And that got me even more excited than I've been in a long time trying to shoot a deer. And it was just another doe at that point, but it ended up being something special.
Well, and I guess the overall sort of the culmination of this for you is, that's your personal experience. Your first deer, this experience with your daughter. But what you're doing, it's almost like a paying it forward through your work and your job with MDWFP. You're helping to create thousands more experiences just like that.
That's right.
For future generations. What a purpose.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have landowners all the time. They're like, oh, I don't want to bug you, I don't want to text you another deer picture or something like that. But honestly, I get a lot of enjoyment because I'm living, through their experiences too. Their successes are my successes, working with them, on these properties and stuff. So I love to see that, especially, children getting into it, and their first deer on these properties. And yeah, it's something special.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. Pierce, thanks so much for being on.
Yes, sir.
Really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Pierce Young, Private Lands Wildlife Biologist here at Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and 2022 Biologist of the Year here on the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you outdoors.